Well, hello there, and welcome back to our study in the book of Job. This program is brought to you each Wednesday night at 7 o'clock p.m. by the Port Huron Church of Christ, located at 756 17th Street, right here in the city of Port Huron. Whew. Last week was a great week. But before we get into it, let's look at this here. And remember that if you have questions, this is our website where you can write us at office@porthuronchurchofchrist.org and just put in the subject line Job and write your question, and then we will answer it on the air. We appreciate you being with us so much. And if you were here last week, boy, oh boy, oh boy, wasn't that something? Thank you for joining us again today. You know, I had a thought that I wanted to share with you. If you're just now joining us, we're on chapter 22. So we've been here for a little time now. You can go back and read the Bible and catch up to us. But if you want to see the preceding episodes, go to our website at porthuronchurchofchrist.org. Same one as we just showed you without the office at in front of it. And there you will find all of the episodes from the very beginning of this study, as well as there's a John study going on currently that you will find there that's extremely, extremely wonderful. And also, there's more. We've just concluded a study in Isaiah by Paul Bush. There was an excellent study. And that's there. So there's a lot of material there that you can access and study. And we want to encourage you to go there and take advantage of that. That's what it's there for, so that you can learn more about the God that we serve and you can appreciate Him greater. So thank you for joining us and going on this journey with us through Job. And if this is your first time, welcome aboard. There's always a seat for more on board this train. Now, we want to pick up where we kind of left off. It's kind of hard to leave that moment. I don't know for you, that was just so refreshing to realize and put in perspective, and I hope that it blessed your life as much as it blessed mine. God is just incredible. That's all I can say. And He loves us so much, and He's just trying to get us to see it. Isn't it interesting that no matter how hard you try, humanity just doesn't want to see that. And it's so sad. But let's get back to our study of Job and look at where we start today. Show them, Jim. Round 3. That's right. This has become a prize fight. And now we're headed into round 3. And I want to read a little intro before we start getting into round 3 of how this is going to go throughout this round, because this is the third and final round of the discussions. Up until now, the speeches have occurred in this repeated pattern, where Eliphaz spoke first, Job responded. Then Bildad threw his 2 cents in, Job responded. And then Zophar responded to Job, and that's the way it has gone, in that order. Now, what we're going to find in round 3 is that Bildad has apparently run out of steam. He's run out of arrows and rocks to throw at Job, because he's only going to speak for 6 verses, which is almost nothing. And Zophar, on the other hand, is not even present. He has given up. He won't even have comment in this third and final round. And what's going to be interesting is that Job is going to take off now and speak for 5 straight chapters. That's right. Job is going to occupy the stage from chapters 26 to 31, so he has a lot to say. The question is why? Why has this taken place? Why the changes? And there's a couple of thoughts. Maybe Job has finally worn them down in his defense of his position, and because they have failed in their arguments to convince him, they're just pretty much giving up. Maybe they're beginning to see his point of view, and I doubt it, but maybe they're seeing some of what Job is thinking is correct. But the likely reason is that they have finally convinced themselves that Job is too hard-headed to heed their warning. So why waste any more time and energy on such a lost cause? The answer is found later in the book. But I'm going to keep you in suspense until we get to that point. I'm not going to give it away because then you won't come back. But I want you to engage your thoughts and seek to untangle this mass of theological rhetoric that we have been exposed to, and not only to digest the arguments, but also, which is more important than to listening to them, is to discern what's right and what's wrong. Not everything the guys said to Job was wrong. And certainly not everything they said to Job was correct. Not everything Job said was right, and not everything that Job said was incorrect. So there's a lot for us to discern, and part of the reason why I'm asking you to do this is so that you can learn to discern correct statements from incorrect statements. That's part of our growth in biblical study and in our theological knowledge, is to listen and know and be able to dissect theology, and so that we don't take the bad along with a piece of good that's baited to us with bad theology wrapped around it. And that's what we'll learn from the book of Job. So that's coming. So be patient, and we'll get to that answer, I promise. Now, Eliphaz, who has always spoken first, is stepping into the ring for round 3, and he is fed up, and now he's throwing punches with both hands. His criticisms immediately start to sound like the same song, the 3rd verse, and now he continues to make these false accusations against Job. So let's look at Eliphaz in his final speech. Now he directly accuses Job of specific sinful behaviors and attitudes for which he believes God is punishing Job by the means of the suffering that he has inflicted on Job. As I said on last week, this is what they have concluded from the very beginning when they first saw him. You've done something wrong and God has punished you. And it holds up for them because they have the evidence sitting in front of them, even though we all know from reading the chapters 1 and 2 that God had very little to do with what's going on with Job. He gave Satan permission, but he didn't tell him what to do. He only told him what he couldn't do. So this is all, as we understand, to be the work of the Satan. So he sees Job now as one of these proud rich people who has profited by exploiting the poor and then arrogantly rejecting God's claim upon their lives. So in his final speech now, you will notice more sarcasm and accusatory statements from Eliphaz than in his previous statements. Now, when he first started, at the very, very beginning of this, he was so kind to Job, and he was so delicate and gentle in the way he approached Job. And if you remember that, and if you don't remember, go back and read that. When he first spoke to Job, not so anymore. He's going to come straight at Job and give it to him because, like I said, this is his last round. He's had enough. And now he is going to counter Job's statements that he made to Zophar. And this is the way it's gone. One guy makes a statement, Job counters that statement. The next guy takes what Job just said and counters that. And then Job comes back and counters him. And this has been going on and on and on. And now this is the third round of that. So he's going to counter the claim that God does not judge the wicked by portraying the suffering of Job as living proof that he does. So Job says, God doesn't do what you do. And Eliphaz is going to point at him and say, but look at you. This is exactly what he did to you. Is exactly what we're saying that he does. And like I said, there's a degree of truth to that. If you didn't really know what we know, and these guys don't, you would think that what they're saying is correct, even though they are wrong as two left shoes. So here we're going to hear from Eliphaz in chapter 22. Now, his statements divide into three major sections, and we're going to cover this way, and then we're going to read Job's response back to them. The first takes place in verses 1 through 11, and he's going to make this charge against Job, against the poor, and we'll look at all of these statements. And in verses 12 to 20, he's going to charge him of siding with the wicked. And lastly, in 21 to 30, he's going to call Job to repentance. Now in 1 through 4, Eliphaz considers that because Job complained so much about his afflictions at the very beginning, and mind you, it's warranted. Job had a normal life like you and I, and all of a sudden, everything fell apart in an instant, and Job's trying to struggle to wrap his head around it while he's in a tremendous amount of pain. And so as he voiced his feelings, his friends now are jumping on that bandwagon and almost punishing him for that. And because he complained, Job thought that God was unjust in his afflicting him. They thought that Job thought that, but Job really wasn't there yet. Job went there later, but he wasn't there. So what Eliphaz says is unjustly applied to Job, and that's the point here. I want you to listen to what he says, and the statements that he makes to Job are really, they don't necessarily totally apply to him as he's trying to say. And Job is going to make that point when he refutes these statements. So, but what is very true is that when God treats us good, it is not because God owes it to us. God is never indebted to us for anything. And I know that there's a theology that kind of goes along those lines that says that we can curry favor from God so that he feels that he has to give us things. You know, back when I was a child, there were organizations, charitable organizations that would, they were seeking money from my mother. And my mother was one of those kind of people that would have a stack like this, and she would just give them all money because that was her heart. But they would always give her something, a little token. Some gave her a quarter, a dime, because that generation, they felt that if you gave them something, they owed you something back as a result of your generosity. That's the way they were raised, and they used that. And my mother always was very liberal and generous because she saw their cause and wanted to give back to them. Well, there are people that think God acts like that, that we can do something for God, and in return, God's going to bless and give us something. So I'm going to go out on a limb for God and Maybe I'll spend the whole day working with the poor in some way. And as a result of that, I'm doing that because I want him to give me something. Well, Job is saying God doesn't work like that. And Job is right. And I think we all understand that to be the truth. And Eliphaz is saying that God treats us good, not because he's indebted us, that man's piety is no profit to God, there's no gain, and that we can't be religious enough to warrant God's blessings in our life. That's the point that's being made here. The gains of religion to men are greater than the losses of it. God, here's the point, is sovereign, who gives no account of his conduct, but he is perfectly wise, just, faithful, good, and merciful. He approves the likeness of his own holiness and delights in the fruit of his spirits. He accepts the thankful services of the humble believer, while he rejects the proud claim of the self-confident. We know that to be true. The Bible says that over and over and over again. God answers to nobody. He's sovereign. That's what it means. He and he alone rules the universe. He and he alone created the universe. He and he alone determines everything that happens in his universe by his wisdom. Who are we to tell him anything? Who are we to think that God needs us for anything? Did you become a Christian so that you can help God? Come on, really. Do you think he really needs your help for anything? No. God said, children, if I wanted children, I can turn the stones into children. God can do whatever he wants. We became Christians because of our love for what he has done. And this great offer that he's given us at the cross. We're responding in gratefulness. God's not indebted to us for joining his side, joining his team. It doesn't do anything to change who God is. We don't make God more valuable because we're part of his family. No. It makes us more valuable because we're part of his family. I better stop before I start preaching again. I think I did that too much last week. So, in verse number 5, Eliphaz is going to ask the question now to Job. Is not your wickedness great? That is, it's a utter presumption and foolishness for a man whose wickedness is undoubtedly so great to presume to enter into litigation with God. Remember, Job is calling for court with God. Remember, we covered that a few weeks ago, and Job said, where is someone that can mediate between me and God so that I can argue my case? Job is trying to understand. He said, listen, I've heard all of I heard every word you guys have said, and no one yet has told me anything that I have done wrong. And what Job is caught into, and I think we've covered this before, I'm pretty sure, but I want to just remind you, Job is saying, I have consistently done everything that I have been doing for all of these years. I have changed nothing. And God has blessed me and prospered me greatly. And now all of a sudden, I haven't changed anything and my life has fallen apart. Somebody tell me what happened. What did I do? You're accusing me of being wicked and having secret sin. What did I do? Because I'm telling you, nothing has changed. So he's asking God, finally, he said, listen, I need to stand before the only one that can judge me honestly and answer the question, and that's God. He said, I want to stand there with him and ask him, And I want to hear what he would have to say, because I'm tired of listening to you guys that think you know, but you don't know what you think you know. But I know you don't know what you think you know. It's one of those. And so he's fed up. And now Eliphaz here assumes that without question, Job was a great sinner, and this is the point that he's going to make to him. So he and his friends now have been arguing around the idea in general terms and had maintained that one who was a great sinner would be punished in this life for it. Now, this is the point now. Because up until this time, they've been talking about, if you've been following this and caught this, and I intentionally didn't mention this, they were using these terms, the wicked, and I've been kind of filling in the blank with Job's name because that's what they were really saying, but they weren't saying Job. They were just saying the wicked, waiting for Job to catch the hint. So they said, well, the wicked have this happen to them, and they were trying to say, and Job, since you had that happen to you, you must be the wicked too. They were doing one of those things, and they were waiting for him. But up to this point, the charge has not been openly made to Job. And now Eliphaz is going to fire those Scud missiles right at Job. He is not going to use these ambiguous terms, the wicked. He's going to come straight at Job to the face and argue that the only proof he had so far is that Job has been afflicted and great sinners would be, and therefore concluded he must be a sinner because he's been afflicted. And we've talked about that premise. But here's what it looks like. Here's what he's saying. And we use this kind of logic all the time in many things. He says, if God inflicts sinners, and Job has been inflicted by God, because remember, that's what Job said. Job said, God has done this to me. And Job, and they all agree that this is the work of God. So if God inflicts sinners, and Job has been inflicted by God, then what's the conclusion? You got it. Job, you're a sinner. No facts are referred to, except that he was a great sufferer, yet on the grounds of this point, Zophar proceeds to take it for granted that Job must have been a man who had taken a pledge maybe for no cause, had refused to give maybe water to the thirsty. He's searching now, he's fishing for what Job has in his life because he's trying to bring him somewhere. He's jogging his memory of his life to bring him to a place, a point, and we'll get there in a minute. He said maybe he's been an oppressor of some type. Maybe he's guilty of all of these sinful deeds. And in 5 through 14, Eliphaz brought heavy charges against Job without reason for his accusations, except that Job has been visited, as he supposes God always visits every wicked man. He charged him with oppression, and that he did harm with his wealth and power in the time of his prosperity. So I'm going to read you some verses now that this is what Eliphaz said. You demanded, he's talking to Job, he said, you demanded security from your relatives for no reason. You stripped people of their clothing, leaving them naked. You gave no water to the weary, and you withheld food from the hungry. Though you were a powerful man owning land, an honored man living on it, and you sent widows away empty-handed and broke the strength of the fatherless. That is why Snares are all around you, why sudden perils terrify you, why it is so dark you cannot see, and why a flood of water covers you. It is not God in the highest of heavens? And see how lofty are the highest stars? Yet you say, what does God know? Does he judge through such darkness? Thick clouds veil him so he does not see us. And as he goes about in the vaulted heavens, will you keep to the old path that the wicked have trod? They are carried off before their time, their foundations washed away by a flood. They say to God, leave us alone. What can the Almighty do to us? Yet it was he who filled their houses with good things. So I stand and look from the plans of the wicked. The righteous see their ruin and rejoice. The innocent mock them, saying, surely our foes are destroyed, and fire devours their wealth. Submit to God and be at peace with him. In this way, prosperity will come to you. Get it now, here it is. Accept the instructions from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. And if you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove wickedness far from your tent and assign your nuggets to the dust, your gold of Ophir to the rocks in the ravines, then the Almighty will be your gold, the choicest silver for you. Now, I want to go back and look at some points and what he has says to Job, and understand a little bit about what he's trying to see. Because Job had said that God did not deal with people in this world according to their character. He doesn't treat us whether we're wicked or we're righteous. That's what Job said. Now, and they are saying the opposite. So here's my question. Who do you believe? Which side are you on? Are you believing that God deals with us according to how we act, whether we're righteous or wicked? Or do you believe with what Job is saying, that it doesn't matter whether we are? God does what he does. Well, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? You know, it was really interesting here listening to these guys' argument. What if God did that? What if God treated us by how we acted from moment to moment? I think we would have some really bad days. Because it's not only our actions, it's our thoughts. So what kind of thoughts? Let's start there. Let's make it easy. Let's start with our deeds. Because most of us can control our deeds relatively easy. We still get into trouble in certain areas of our life, but for the most part, we can control that. Now let's take it up to God level, and we're at our thoughts. Gets a little harder, doesn't it? Because sometimes we think things when we don't want to think things that we end up thinking, knowing that we shouldn't be thinking them. Ever been cut off by somebody while you were driving? What did you think? Did you think, oh, I hope they have a pleasant day today? Or did your thoughts immediately go to, where's the police when you need them? If I only had missiles connected to my gun, to my car, and a button to push, I would push it right now. It's human. You know, we're not God. We can't live in this place of perfect holiness. We can't. Because we mess up. And if God was to bless us, and then in a moment, because we mess up, punish us, what kind of life would that be for us? I don't know about you, but I'm glad that we have mercy and grace. I'm still evolving as a person. I think you're probably still evolving as a person as well. None of us have made it there, and I don't know if we will ever make it to pure perfection. I seriously doubt it. But God said, keep your eyes on Jesus. He's the goal. Become like him. And that's what we're trying to grow in. And that's why we're looking at this. Because we want to understand God from his mouth instead of the theology of men, which we are getting a heavy dose of from Job and his friends. Even Job had a theology that's going to change. And his change is coming. It's only a few more chapters, and you're going to see a major shift in Job's theology. Because he's going to realize that he looked at God a little incorrectly himself. As a matter of fact, Job is going to actually agree with just a little bit of what his friend says. Fancy that. But all of that is going to have to come next week. That's right. Not again. Our time has run out, and we're going to have to pick up this discussion right here next week. And I want you to continue reading, continue praying, that God will help you to understand his will greater and to know and be able to discern these theologies that we have floating around today. There's so many that are so erroneous, that are so anti-biblical even. And just because a guy stands behind a pulpit with a microphone and a Bible doesn't mean he's always telling you the truth. There's a lot of people taking the Bible and doing some very interesting things with it. But it's never to the benefit of God. It's always to the benefit of man or men or some group of men. And that's where the train leaves the tracks. It's all about God. It always has been, and it always will be. So we pray that you will continue this study of Job with us. It just seems our time goes by so fast. But together we will make it through this. And in the end, I believe that we will be blessed from this time because we will have a clearer understanding of the God of the universe. Until next week, be blessed.